In Europe, scones are very different than they are here in America. If you go to Brown's Hotel, for example, in London, my wife and I were there a couple years ago with all 4 kids. They're very light and they're very small, much like a really good American biscuit. Here in this country, we love everything big. We have big appetites and we also have big scones. And these things are big lunkers, like a big fish that doesn't taste very good. So the question is, how do you make a nice, light, fluffy scone, really more like the English tradition than what we have here in our coffee shops? So Julia's going to come and help me now and figure out how to make them in, what, 10 or 12 minutes of baking, and also with just a few minutes of prep.
Yeah, they taste 10 times better than those.
That's not hard. Okay, so let's get going.
So because this dough takes almost no time to put together, you do preheat the oven to 425 before you get started. So this is 2 cups of AP flour.
AP flour simply means all-purpose flour.
That was half a teaspoon of salt. This is 1 tablespoon of baking powder, and only 3 tablespoons of sugar, which isn't very much. This isn't a cake, this isn't a cupcake, it's a breakfast item. A little sweetness goes a long way. So dry ingredients, we're going to kind of just mix them up real quickly.
So far, this is very much like making a traditional American baking powder biscuit.
Yeah.
Okay.
And this is 5 tablespoons of butter, cut very small, and it's very cold. It just came out of the freezer. Sprinkle that around. And much like a pie dough, we're going to pulse this about 10 to 12 times. All right, let's take a look at what this looks like. As you notice, the butter is all but pretty much disappeared. It just looks like rough cornmeal, if you will. And that's perfect.
This actually has a little bit less butter than an American biscuit might have.
Right.
This has 5 tablespoons. An American biscuit might have 7 or 8 tablespoons.
Right.
So it's a little bit less of this kind of fat.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
you want to put the currants in there too before we?
Oh yeah. So you can put them in now. You can actually put them in a little bit afterwards, but it's nice to get them mixed in with the flour.
I get to eat the last one.
So this is a currant cream scone.
Okay. Okay.
All right.
Cream.
So you can add the cream in the Cuisinart, but what we've found is that depending on the day, the humidity, you might not need all the cream. So this is a cup.
Sometimes the flour absorbs more cream, sometimes than other times.
Yeah, on a humid day, it might absorb less because there's already a lot more moisture in the flour than on a dry day. So this looks a little dry, and so I'm going to add a little bit more of this cream.
So if you added all the cream at the beginning, you might end up with a dough that's too wet.
Right.
Okay.
You can see it's starting to come together, kind of the big chunks. And what we're going to do now is put this out onto the board itself, dust this with a little flour, and turn this out. There we go.
Can I eat some of the dough?
Sure.
My kids prefer the dough vastly more than the finished product.
And the cookies?
Or the biscuits or the scones. So why do you, once you do the food processor, why do you actually have to work it on a table when you're...
Because you added the cream, and you want the cream to hydrate the flour all the way through. If you added the cream in the Cuisinart, you just leave it in a little longer.
The real reason is you can't get your hands off the dough, right?
I do like feeling
Everybody in this kitchen, they always use a food processor, and then what do you know, they got their hands on it, so...
I like seeing
it's only a minute, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's good to know where the dough's at and know what you're really doing. Okay, so this is a quick trick to getting really perfectly shaped scones. You press it into
So this is what, an 8-inch non-stick cake pan?
Non-stick cake pan, and you just press it in.
So this is like scones for idiots, which I guess we qualify as...
What are you calling me?
It's no free form. This is...
All right, so now that's done. Let's see if we can get it out. Ta-da!
That looks good.
Perfectly round. All right, so out of this, we're going to cut the traditional scone shape, the wedges.
But actually, traditional scone shape could also be round.
All right.
This is the one we like best. So what, you're cutting them and then putting them on a sheet instead of baking it as a whole round because they get baked better?
Yeah,
okay.
The air can move around the individual scone and bake all the way through. This is ungreased.
Okay. Could you use parchment paper on there? I guess you
could.
Sure.
And then the final part to this scone, to make a nice glaze on top, you can brush it with a little extra cream.
But while she's doing that, you can do lots of variations of this. You can do a fresh ginger scone, which is actually fresh pieces of ginger. Cranberry orange is nice, blueberry lemon, or an oatmeal raisin scone as well. And all of those are on our website. You can get the variations there.
And then sprinkle a little bit of sugar. You don't have to, but I think this adds a nice little glaze.
No, I knew you'd put sugar on it.
Into the 425 oven for about 10 to 12 minutes on the middle rack. until they're lightly browned on the top.
And we also found that, just like a biscuit, you don't want it to sit too long once it's out at room temperature. You want to get it into a hot oven very quickly. Otherwise, this tends to lose its shape. It doesn't come up as high.
The baking powder, I mean, it's acting, and the longer it sits, the less active it'll be.
So we'll be back in 10 or 12 minutes. Nice hot oven, and we'll taste them and see if they're as good as we promised. It's been 10 or 11 minutes.
Yep. And,
oh man, those look great.
Oh, they smell amazing. So they're lightly browned on top, which is just what you want. Now they're going to
smell them.
Yeah. So they're a little delicate right now, so you don't want to eat them right away. But we are going to transfer them to...
Right, so I got to wait now?
Yeah.
Okay.
A little patience. Let them, as they cool, they'll firm up a bit and be easier to eat.
This one looks a little like the Titanic instead of slipping inside. So we let them cool, because if you eat them right away, they're very crumbly. They don't hold together well. Let me just show you what it's like inside. Nice and crispy on the outside, but inside, it's very moist. And it's kind of short. It's really wonderful. It's not like a pie dough, which is flaky. Some biscuits and scones are dry throughout. They're
tender.
They're tender.
And nice and short. You know how they kind of crumble apart, almost like short, you know, that short bread sort of like texture on the outside.
Actually, you can see this. It's got nice and light and fluffy on the inside, but it's moist. It's great. It's really terrific. And the butter's got a nice little kick to it.
Have some jam.
Jam with your currants. It's better than any biscuit I've had. So here we are. Better than Bisquick and just as easy.